Because why did you, well, if, for example, you've done a biblical lecture, right?
Yeah.
So why have you done a biblical lecture, not a lecture on Zeus and this and all? It gave us a sin, the other man took it away. Basically, I mean, we're fallen creatures, and then Jesus, you got to believe in sola fide. You believe in whatever you know.
And I think that's definitely true of those biblical narratives, and it's very interesting that they point them out.
Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Pedjo versus Mohammed Hijab have this conversation on Islam and Christianity, which makes more sense. So let's get right into it. Make sure to watch till the end because I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Let's get into it.
There is no evidence of that. In fact, what it's shown us is that there's more bloodshed. Individualism has caused more death. Like, you know, with all due respect, I know that you do cherish individualism. I'm not saying everything is bad about it, but there's, when you have a society deplete of a communitarian ethic, is bereft of a communitarian ethic, then you can have these issues. And so these are conversations, and I think you are moving towards a communitarianism. Your newest book, you were talking about institutions and these kind of things, and the respect for tradition and these kind of things. I'm not sure if I'm reading you correctly, but these are the kinds of conversations I think we need to have. But on that point, I think, I don't want this to be interrogative. And I
just want to interject
please.
thing, because I think it's important. I think, Jordan, you're very kind, and I understand. I also watched the message to Muslims, and I thought there were some problems with it, definitely.
Okay.
But when you said there's an elephant in the room that I want to address, my mind immediately went to videos I've seen of you with some of your friends in the street and suggesting violence and suggesting aggressive actions against other communities, which in the West is something that, let's say, in Canada, people don't do that. And that even though there might be civil conflicts, we have a state, we have police, we have an apparatus, which is there to deal, which is not completely perfect, but which functions to install the rules. So when I see someone in the street surrounded by men, surrounded by men wearing masks, who are talking about, if these other groups come out, you know, they're going to see us and we're going to be there, and I'm looking for Jews, and we're talking about blood, and there's these very strange behaviors that I think that if you're going to...
we're looking for Jews? Do you remember that when I said that exact statement?
I just remember you talking to police about
Jewish people?
Yeah.
I'd like to get an exact quote. Okay, so I don't remember. I recall.
Well, the other one, the one that I definitely saw that you spoke for quite a while was relating to some issues with Hindu community.
So what happened recently? I don't want to go.
Well, this is
I think the reason why it's important. The reason why it's important is that I'm a Christian, very much a Christian. I have many problems with modern Western culture. Right. But we are in the West.
Okay.
Right, and you are in the West.
Yeah, and I am a Westerner.
Right, and you live in the West, and so...
And I'm British.
Yes.
Just like you're Canadian.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And so, to me, the elephant in the room is that's part of the elephant in the room. Right, there are many people who told Jordan not to come here because of those videos.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people that told me not to have this conversation with Jordan because of some of his videos. And that's why me and Jordan...
Lots of people don't want to have difficult conversations.
But what I'm saying with Jordan is that what makes him gallant and brave is that despite those voices that are the voices of disunity, because he's been cancelled more times than I have, despite the fact that he's been cancelled in Cambridge University or whatever, I don't care about all these institutions. With all due respect, I know this man is a person of influence. And in my estimation, I see him as one of the most, if not the most influential Western public voice. Right? So for that reason, I speak to him. And for that reason, I don't apologize to anyone for doing so. And I think in a way, he sees the same thing in me. Maybe not to the same level, but the fact that I'm half his age, he knows what's going to come in 30 years' time. So he's playing the cards right. And I think at the end of the day, my voice...
Talk about arrogancy. He's saying he's going to be the most influential person of his age. I don't know, man. I don't know really who takes you seriously that I've heard and seen. And there's a lot of things coming out now, like scandals and sexual allegations.
My emotions, what I'm saying in the streets of London or Leicester, whatever else, is how a lot of Muslim people feel. But don't forget, yes, I'm disagreeable. And I'm not, my temperament is not the temperament of the average Muslim. So you've got to differentiate between me as an individual, me, Mohammed Hijab as an individual, and Islam. Do you see? If you say, Mohammed Hijab, you are a hypocrite, you are a bad guy, you are violent. So you know what? That's something I have to look into. Do you know what I mean? If that's your advice to me, that's something I have to
Well,
look
I would
into.
also say there's no moral advantage in being a pushover either.
Yes, I
Right,
agree.
and so these things are very hard to calibrate correctly.
Yeah.
And so, and if we come at this in a spirit of mutual ignorance and with some degree of, maybe this is where tolerance is more of an issue. Is, we're going to have to tolerate each other's rough edges and imperfections in order to talk, even if we think that there's something useful to be gleaned. And, my sense is that, we're called upon to separate the wheat from the chaff, and that's not so much to damn the chaff as it is to gather the wheat. And it seems to me in the biblical stories in the Old Testament, there's an immense emphasis, strange emphasis in some real sense. It's one of the things that makes the text so remarkable on the moral stranger and foreigner. And so when the society is unstable and shaking in a variety of ways, it's often the moral foreigner who comes in with something wise to say. And I think that's definitely true of those biblical narratives, and it's very interesting that they point them out. But I think it's also true practically. It's like, it's not as if any of us, like, we want to have faith in our faith, and we need that because it keeps us together individually and it unites us socially. But then if we insist that if I insist that my faith, which is more like my pride in my own belief, is 100% correct, then I've confused myself with my faith. I've confused myself with Christianity, or perhaps you've confused yourself with Islam. And that's a big mistake because...
So let me ask you both a question then, since we can talk about, by the way, one clarification before the question. I've never asked for violence. And that's an accusation I think that needs to be, you need to look back at, because I've never said, let's go and do violence. I said that if such and such group come out again, which were a group of armed people, then we'll be there to defend the community. I've never said in my whole life, and I'll challenge anybody to find anything that's opposite from what I've just said. Now, that's one thing. Second thing I'll say is this, is that, and if it was a violence issue, if I did say that, what's happening with the Metropolitan Police? Why am I not behind bars? Why have there not been a single investigation? It is 210,000 people have watched the video. Unless the police have put their, fingers in their ears, or that they are... If you want to accuse the police of, negligence or incompetence, that's a different story. Because we reject original sin, with all due respect.
Oh my goodness, but this guy is super, super interesting.
Original sin says that one man, gave us...
So now he's going to get into the Christianity part, talking about the original sin. And I'd love to hear what he says about this.
It gave us a sin, the other man took it away. Basically, I mean, we're fallen creatures, and then Jesus, you got to believe in sola fide. You believe in whatever you know about Christian.
I'm Orthodox, so I don't believe that.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, fine.
I don't believe in original sin the way you described it.
Oh,
but that's fine.
But fine. No worries. Eastern Orthodox, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But the issue is that this...
I didn't say I believed in it either. I just said that the concept of original sin is an expression of this problem that we're describing, which is that we're all burdened with something approximating, the thrownness and this ambivalent relationship we have with the atrocity of history. And that's worse, because if you study the atrocity of history with any degree of seriousness, you have to take account of the fact that people like you did it. And you might think, I wouldn't do it. It's like, no,
I get you.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
For sure. I mean, you were talking about the kind of, you were talking about the suffering. And obviously one of the major sufferings is the Holocaust. I was reading the book, The Meaningful Life, Viktor Frankl, I'm sure you're aware of it, where he then produced logotherapy and all these kind of things. And it goes back to what Nietzsche said, if you have a why, almost any how is possible,
Bearable.
Yeah, if you have a why, almost any how is possible. So it goes back to, everything goes back to purpose, logotherapy. Yeah, if you have a purpose, then everything is possible. That's why I think that you can do the best as a human species, in the human condition, if your purpose is transcendental. It's higher than the physical, the material. And for us, the purpose is mentioned in chapter 51, verse 19 of the Quran, which is, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We have not created human beings and jinn except for that they may worship me. What is worship? It's the epitome, the higher point of submission. It is the epitome of love as well.
Jonathan has an interesting take on that too, that has to do with celebration, which I...
Okay. That's all very crazy. Interesting. The Bible says that we must offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. That is true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will know God's will for your life. So it's him. We have to realize that we are sinners, though. We've all made mistakes. Through Jesus, though, is how we can have a relationship with the Father.
I think is psychologically appropriate. Do you want to? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's something I've been struggling to understand more. I've attended some Orthodox ceremonies with Jonathan and also on my own, and he's very perspicacious when it comes to describing the role of both worship and ritual, and so there's an element. Anyways, I'll let you continue with that.
No, I agree. I agree that worship is also the manner in which we bind together, right? And so without something we celebrate together, then we don't. And so we have different levels of what we celebrate. We can celebrate in our families, the things that bind us, but ultimately that has to reach all the way up into something which is beyond.
I think that's actually very powerful.
When I do something like I interrogate a question, well, the postmodern problem does emerge. Now, I've been trying to work out solutions to that, and Jonathan and I and John Vervaeke have been discussing this a lot. The postmodernists were correct, I think, in their diagnosis of the problem. They leapt right to the idea that the way we solve the problem of perception is by exercising power. They just took a Marxist story and said, well, there's the solution.
When you say they here, who are you talking about in particular?
Mostly the French intellectual types like
Derrida.
Derrida and Foucault.
I would disagree with this, by the way. I don't think Derrida or Foucault took a Marxist position at all.
Well, Jonathan, you want to have at that for a bit?
But that's not my fight. It's a worthless victory for me.
Are you sure you want to talk about that?
No. I don't think, I don't care.
Okay, well, we can either delve into that or not.
Yeah.
Let me just say something on Jordan.
This is such a weird clip because it's like they're about to get into something and then they just fast forward. What in the world?
About what you were saying, that is, I think that when there's this question of do you believe in God, I think one of the problems that the difficulty that Jordan was faced with a modern Protestantism, which was very propositional. And it was like, I believe, and it's just a bunch of things that you believe in terms of thinking. And I do think that what Jordan is trying to grasp at and trying to understand is actually probably closer to something that most traditional Muslims would believe, which is that if you say that you submit to God, but you don't submit to God, then that word is empty.
That I agree with.
Yes.
And the question is, why is it empty, right? Yeah. If you said the words, why is it still empty?
And so I think that what he's grasping at is to find a more encompassing, it's like, stop asking me if I believe in God, watch me.
Yeah. Okay. No, but I get what you're saying. But what?
That's not the basic belief of Protestantism, because at the end of the day, you can say one thing with your mouth but not really mean it. How do you know if you mean it? Is by your actions, how you live your life. Are you truly living for Jesus? Are you repenting of your sins? Are you making him your Lord and Savior over your life? That's a big difference. If not, then you probably didn't make Jesus your Lord and Savior.
Saying is that the attitude that you have towards scientific investigation is that which is more congruent with a correspondence theory type understanding.
Yes.
Right? So you simply ask the question that, by the way, the Quran asks. And one of the central questions the Quran asks us to ask, Christians and Jews, is قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your evidence if you're truthful. This is the central question that Muslims are asked to ask. The same question that you, as a scientist, ask, we have to ask as well, right? And I'm using the word ask a lot here. What I'm saying is, this is where the cognitive dissonance may come in. I'm not saying
it does come in.
So
that is part of what's torn the West apart on the basis of the Enlightenment versus the religious tradition, to the degree that that's a conflict.
Just to add to this point is, for example, going back to Origin of Alexandria, yeah? Origin of Alexandria, because he has this hermeneutical dilemma. He has a hermeneutical dilemma, right? He doesn't know what to do with what verse. Is he going to spiritualize it, metaphorize it, or is he not going to do that? He was asked by an apologist called Celsus. He said, what do you say of the crucifixion? And he responds to an effect to say that not everything was true, what happened, right, in the crucifixion. Point is that when you open the can of worms of hermeneutical spiritualization or exegetical or metaphorization, yeah, when you open that can of worms, what is left of Christianity is basically mythological. Now, then I will say, what makes this myth better than any other myth? Why are we investigating the myth of Christianity and not, for example, the myth of Hercules and Zeus? Why is the figure of Father and Son and Holy Spirit more important to me than the Mithraic, Trinity?
Yeah, well, that's a postmodern question.
Okay, you know why? Because there's evidence for Jesus's resurrection. There's evidence why we can believe in what we believe, guys. Come on. There's no evidence for any of those things.
And you could take that even farther and say, well, why this story rather than that story at any level of story? And that is a central question.
So how would you answer? Because why did you, well, if, for example, you've done a biblical lecture, right?
Yeah.
So why have you done a biblical lecture, not a lecture on Zeus and this and all these other...
Well, I have done lectures on other religious structures, particularly on ancient Egyptian cosmology and on Mesopotamian cosmology. And I'm going to do a lecture on the Tao Te Ching.
Sorry, do you consider the biblical narrative as having any level of superiority over the other mythologies?
Well, okay. So let me try to address this psychologically.
Oh, even he's interested now.
Well, yeah, because I am a Christian.
So I've been trying to understand. So I'll tell you one thing that clinical psychologists have learned over the last 100 years, despite their doctrinal differences. So there's many schools of clinical psychology, ranging from behaviorism, which is very practical and strategic, and has to do with micro changes in action, to psychoanalytic theory, say on the Jungian side, which is more interested in dreams and large-scale transformations of the imagination. Spans a huge range of philosophies and practical approaches. But
Romans 3:23 says, "For everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard." So go to Jesus today, know that he loves you, he's longing to have a relationship with you. Put him first. It will be the best decision you could ever make.